But really, I guess I wanted to start off tonight by saying that I feel very weird, but I feel good right now. I just ended what amounted to be basically a 2 day water fast. I ended it a little early. I ended it around, I think it was 46 and a half hours fasted. And I'm a little disappointed in myself, but I also think it was the right thing to do. I actually, when I started the fast, I wanted to go for 3 days. The plan was to end tomorrow evening. And if you're not familiar, or if you're not aware, tomorrow is a full moon. I think it actually goes full around like 3:30 p.m. Central Time, something around there. I was trying to time my fast to where I would be 3 days fasted and ending it on the full moon, but I just really wasn't feeling good. This week has been very busy for me at work. Tomorrow hopefully isn't too horrible, but I am also planning on having a lot of work tomorrow as well. And as I was driving home today, I just felt like extremely, well, obviously I felt tired and fatigued. I mean, that kind of happens when you fast. I've been fasting on and off for probably like the last 10 years or so of my life. So I'm pretty familiar with how fasting affects my body. But you're never fully prepared, I don't think, for the mental aspect of it that comes about when you fast. Because I mean, you'll hear a lot of people say this. It's not just me, but one of the biggest hurdles when you're fasting, in addition to the lack of energy, which certainly is there, in addition to lack of energy, is really just the mental aspect. Because we are so used to eating, like our brains are just so focused on eating, especially like we grow up in this society where usually it's standard to eat like 2 or 3 times a day, and usually the meals are pretty big. At least if you're in America, the meals are usually pretty big. I personally have a habit of overeating. Like, I fully acknowledge that. That's one of the reasons why I do fast, for spiritual reasons and health reasons, is I'm trying to fix and heal my relationship with food. But so you'll get this lack of energy when you fast, but really, like, the mental portion of it is difficult. And I was going through it today, going through it pretty bad today. But I was driving home from work, and I just had this like intense, so today at work was pretty intense. It was like I was busy the whole day, nonstop, just crazy chaos type stuff I was dealing with. And then, so I was already like mentally just exhausted from work as I was leaving. And then as I was driving home, I just really noticed like I had this just insane amount of brain fog, and I couldn't really think straight. And it's hard to explain. Like, it's not even that I was really physically tired, but I was mentally tired, and I had a lot of brain fog. And so I was really like thinking and praying about it. Like, hey, should I continue the fast tomorrow and break it like I planned? Or should I break it tonight? And I really struggled with the decision. And part of me does feel like kind of a loser and a failure, but ultimately I felt like Spirit was guiding me to end the fast, and that's because I'm expecting a lot of work tomorrow for my job, a lot of chaos and stuff like that. And I'm going to need all the physical and mental energy I can have, I believe, to make it through tomorrow and Friday for work. And so I really just came to the decision that I needed to end my fast. so I can show up tomorrow in the best version, as the best version of myself as I can be. And it is a blessing that in my job, I know there's this thing going around online about how like a lot of people are kind of clowning on what they consider to be useless and pointless jobs, right? That a lot of companies make up, and those obviously exist, jobs where you're kind of sitting around doing nothing. But I guess both the good and bad thing about my position is is definitely not that. It is extremely necessary. If I wasn't doing my position, they would have to have someone else do the position because it is extremely necessary, and our company would frankly not operate if someone wasn't doing my position. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I'm the most important person or anything. I mean, I fully understand that my company could replace me. We are all replaceable, by the way. Not that that should scare you or depress you, but it is a truth that I think is important to acknowledge. Like, we should never put ourselves above the group because we are all replaceable. But it's a good thing to think about, and I find it to be humbling, because I have this attitude in life that I want to do what I can to serve others. I think that's the healthiest way of viewing work and really our life. And it's not something that you hear a lot of people talk about or preach. However, I think it's important to try to serve others and serve the world and serve yourself. And so I try to serve others at work, and I have this important position to where I need to show up tomorrow and the rest of this week and, so on and so forth in the best version of myself, as the best version of myself with as much energy as I can muster. Because if I don't, maybe things go awry. And a lot of people across the country, and I'm not going to get into what I actually do for work, but it is not hyperbole, literally, to say that a lot of people across the whole country of the United States are relying on me to show up every day and be the best version of me and get done what needs to be done. And so after praying in my car on the ride home, I just really came to the conclusion that I needed to end my fast. And so I did. I ate some really good organic, a little expensive too, but organic ground beef, I think is what it was. 90% lean, 10% fat ground beef. It's delicious. And I also had some chips and salsa because, man, I guess the Mexican part of me is still in me. And, sometimes I just love eating chips and salsa. That's about the only Mexican food I ever eat anymore. Primarily because of diet reasons and also because I don't live in a Spanish area anymore. But, I love chips and salsa. So that's how I broke my fast. And I'm already feeling actually a lot better and a lot more energized. So I believe the divine is showing me that that was the correct thing to do. But it was really hard, and there's a lot of things in life, and I guess this gets me into one thing I want to talk about here tonight. This gets me into something about life that I've been trying to do recently, which is I'm trying to live based off of intuition more than logic. And I know this is something that most people will tell you should not do. So most people will caution you to not listen to me and tell me I'm an idiot. But to be fully transparent, I try to live a a very spiritual life in tune with the divine and what I will call God in this case, just because most people can relate to the term God. I'm not a Christian. I don't follow an Abrahamic religion, but I do have a view of the universe in terms of like there's a one overarching entity thing. If you have any knowledge at all about the Hermetic principles, which is like ancient Egyptian, or at least it comes from the ancient Egyptian or Kemet tradition, the Hermeticism, the Hermetic principles. They talk about this idea of the creator or the all. So that's kind of how I view God, and not in the Christian sense, but in the sense that like it's this like it makes like it was the I guess you could call it was the generative principle of this world and of existence, and we are all come from it. We all come from it, and we are all a part of it, and we are all interconnected in it. And underneath it, I do believe that there are other spiritual entities and beings that exist, like gods, goddesses, demons, all that stuff. But we're all subjugated to the overarching all, which leads our life. And I do believe in fate as well, and destiny and stuff like that. And so that's kind of my spiritual view, and I try to live according to the principles of the world and follow the divine's path and will for me. And so I think it's important to follow that intuition, because I really do believe that your intuition, your deepest, innermost sense and feelings, and those so-called voices in your head are just hunches that you have. I think that's, you could say, God speaking to you. And so I think it's important to follow that. And I do that in every facet of my life, even at work. I mean, God, I don't know what my managers would think if they heard me admit this, but sometimes I make business decisions not based on analytics, but based on intuitive hunches. And so far, I've never been wrong. It's pretty, I would say it's amazing, except for I'm to a point in my life where it doesn't even surprise me. It's what I expect. It's what I expect. And, you know, if you are willing and open to receive miracles, I believe miracles will be made and happen. And I've experienced many of them in my life, which hopefully throughout the course of me being a streamer, I will get to relay and talk to you about. Excuse me, let me take a sip of water here. My throat is still a little parched after fasting for so long. I was drinking water, but you'll notice too that as you fast, like you dehydrate a lot quicker, and so yeah, you know, your throat gets a little parched there. But getting back to intuition, I think it's important to live life as intuitively as possible. And I will admit, I've definitely been going down the YouTube rabbit hole of the thing I'm sure some of you have heard of. It's guys calling it retard maxing. I know maybe some people have an issue with that word or term, but generally speaking, I agree with the idea. You know, the idea is really like, you know, they maybe use a more crude word than I would for it, but basically like their idea and the basic premise is to just You follow your intuition, follow God, do what you want to do. Like forget about potential ifs and whats and so ons and so forth. Don't worry about that stuff, man. Go live your life, have fun, and truly honor life, your life, honor your life. I mean, I have so many examples of me doing that and it working out. It's just amazing. And I told one of the stories, I guess, a couple weeks back during one of my streams. I don't know how many people actually heard the story, but you know, I intuitively, on just a hunch, I moved across country to where I am now, and I didn't have the job I have now, but I moved across country for a part-time job, knowing that if I didn't get a better job within 3 months, I was going to go bankrupt and be homeless. And I just really used it as a test of my faith and my determination and, you know, cunning, I guess, or I don't know what word would be better than cunning, but really, like, I wanted to test myself in all areas to see what I could do. And, you know, things happened to where, you know, I got a full-time job, then I got a better full-time job, and then, you know, before I knew it, I'm here now where I am, where I basically make double the amount of money and, like, you know, the most money I've ever made in my life. And it was all based off of the intuitive, extremely scary hunch to move across country for a part-time job. And you know, I'm not going to recommend it to everybody, obviously. I mean, you know, if you want to come at it from a logical perspective, it's definitely not the logical thing to do. And I never told anyone I was doing it either. Like, I never told my parents, because if they did, I'm sure they would have talked me out of it and, you know, been worried for me, which rightfully so. I mean, they love me, thankfully. My parents love me and they care about me. But, you know, just sometimes I think you got to take those risks. Calculated, intuitive risks, and put your life and faith in the divine and allow miracles to enter your life. So that was the part I wanted to talk about, I guess, about fasting. I may think of other things too as I go along here. That was the thing about fasting. But I was thinking about some other things too. In fact, last night, originally I slept for like 2 hours and then woke up and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't go back to sleep because, like, you know, I was in a fasted state at that point in time, probably like around 26 hours in, and like I just had this like crazy energy spike and I couldn't sleep. And so I was walking around outside under the what is in effect a full moon, you know, where, like I said, tomorrow is the full moon. Last night would have been like 2 days before the full moon. But it's still very large in the sky, right? So I was walking around outside and I was just thinking, like, man, you know, like when, I don't know, like, so here's the thing about me. I'll just be open about it because I don't know how I'm going to be a streamer and not have it come up over the course of my time. But I'm definitely a believer in energy, right? I believe energy. I believe I can sense energies. My body's more sensitive to energy. So last night I was feeling like this really weird energy, and you know, every now and then sometimes I would think I'd like, you know, like that feeling you think like, oh, you thought you saw something but nothing's there, or like you just sense something's there. Well, that was kind of happening to me as I was walking, and you know, I wasn't really scared or anything, honestly. It didn't feel like malicious presence or anything, but you know, just kind of curious, right? But it got me thinking back to, gosh, this really weird time in my life back in 2020, I think. Yeah, I think it was 2020. It must have been 2020. Must have been 2020. So there was this point in my life back in 2020 where I like really, really got big into like the occult and mysteries and supernatural type stuff. And I was like trying to do my own research and like into things, right? And one thing about me is I've always loved kind of the vampire lore. I've always been fascinated by the vampire lore. And so I had this like weird period of my life in 2020 where I was fasting, I was praying a lot, I was studying, I was reading like about the Hermetic principles, I was reading about supernatural stuff, and like I went down this weird rabbit hole where I was like becoming pretty convinced that vampires were probably real, and I was like trying to do my own research into it, and I was looking, just trying to figure out like, well, are vampires real? And I went down this weird rabbit hole. You know, I watched all these random YouTube videos, like read up about these weird stories and supposed sightings, like specifically, you know, like in Eastern Europe and stuff, like where the legends of, I guess they call them the Strigoi, like about them being alive out there. And I never really came to a conclusion, to be honest with you, but I think my gut is telling me like they probably are real. I just have no evidence that they are real. And by this point in time, if you're here listening to me and you think I'm absolutely crazy, well, then maybe I'm not your cup of tea. But if you think this is interesting and fascinating, please follow me here on Twitch. I'd love to have you join my community.